Welcome back to the second interview, part two of three, with Cristina Kudlock. In the first episode, we learned about her experience with SEO, and she makes it seem so effortless and easy, and for her it is. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to specifically set up SEO for a real estate wholesaling business. So stay tuned as she gives you all the tips and tricks you're going to need to be able to launch this, implement this in your business, and take your lead gen to new heights. Based on what you've said, I totally get the point that SEO is not something that you're gonna like institute a campaign and the next week you're gonna start seeing immediate returns necessarily. You might sporadically. So
Right.
I assume then that if you're going to implement SEO, the way to probably do that is in conjunction with your other marketing methods and just get that clock ticking and started and kind of build as you go. Is that a fair
A
assumption?
100%. Yes, 100%. I've always had other marketing channels that, when I started SEO too, and it's funny, people are like, most people, they do hire an SEO agency or, firm to work on their website. And when I was starting out, and SEO can be pretty expensive. You probably need to have at least 2,500 bucks minimum a month to set aside for that.
Yeah.
And it could be a year depending on your market, before you're seeing consistent results. So that's a lot to just to sit there and wait, right? When
Sure.
there's some other marketing channels where that's actually going to be converting people within the first few months. And with So one of the things that kind of was a blessing in disguise for me is that I just didn't have that budget when I was starting out. But I did know I was interested in, that this was something that I would want to be doing, in a strategy or a marketing channel that I did want to commit to. So I just kind of learned it myself. And um, and now, like, I have all this SEO information, this know-how in my mind, so it is very, very cheap for me. I think um our cost per deal for last quarter was like $400 per deal.
which
So
which is a fraction of, I mean, it's in a lot
that's
of competitive markets, it's 10 grand, 15 grand per acquisition. So that is phenomenal.
yeah. So that's kind of, that is the plus to learning SEO. But I think I do have a personality type why it worked for me is because I figure, like, I'm definitely an introvert. And if I can, like, geek around on my computer for a few hours, right, and find ways to, like, not have to talk to as many people and them come to me, then I was like, that's cool, as
Makes
opposed
perfect
to, like,
sense. Yeah.
picking up a million calls. Yeah. So I, I think that's just one of my highlights, at least, for SEO.
So I'm going to infer from that, and you can confirm or deny, that what you would suggest is for most people, if they want to do this, first they have to make sure that they can have a consistent budget that's meaningful enough to be able to do monthly to start this venture. And for most people, probably also, they would be better off to maybe hire an agency to do this unless they really enjoy the act of learning SEO and doing it the way you did it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's funny too, because people will ask me, they're like, well, what SEO agency, like, which one, who do you recommend? And it's hard because I haven't really found anyone that I would, like, 100% recommend. And
Sure.
that has always what brought me back to, like, okay, just kind of learn it yourself. So, but there are, I'm sure, like, lots of really good SEO companies out there. You just kind of have to know some degree of SEO on how to know if you're going with a legitimate company or not. Otherwise, like, if they tell you, oh, this is the work that we're going to be doing for you, how do you know if that's even a legit thing?
Great point, because we don't really care as much about the work, we care about the results. So yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great point, because for me, with my super limited knowledge of SEO, if I were to go hire an agency and I didn't know anything about it, yeah, the first person that sounded like they knew what they were talking about would be smarter than me. I'm like, hey, yeah, that's great. Let's hire them. That's a that's a very good point. So what
Yeah.
sort of pointers would you give someone if they are going to go that route to maybe look at an agency? What sort of things would you suggest they look for in engaging an agency?
Yeah. So one of the big factors on what's going to like move the needle on SEO. First, when you're starting out, it's really what's on your page. There's two different aspects of SEO. There's what's called your on page and then your off page. So your on page is just your website itself,
Hmm.
how it's set up, how you organize your pages, what you link to, what actual content is there. And so when you're starting out, really focusing on the on page, and then after that, as you grow, a big determining factor of like rising in rankings is your backlink profile and how much that basically means like other websites pointing to your websites
Okay.
through clickable links. Like if
Hmm.
you're on a news site and then you're reading an article and then it's like sources the Real Freedom Channel, and then you can click on that and it takes them to your Real Freedom Channel website. So all backlinks, that's kind of how you build authority in
Okay.
Google's eyes.
Okay.
And so when you're looking for backlinks, you really want to make sure that the firm that you're hiring would do everything white hat, and they're building links that like aren't spammy, because you can go and build a million links with a bot. But that's really not going to, it's not going to help you in the long term, because sometimes it is easy to game Google, but once they do an algorithm update, like Google's always just getting smarter and smarter, and then they see that, and overnight your site will come crashing down
Got
just
it.
because of what you did wasn't it's called white hat. So
Yep.
that would be a really good search term. If you are looking for an SEO agency, you want to find someone that does everything white hat. So that's
Yep.
like by Google's guidelines.
Okay.
Um, and most SEO, so that's kind of like the crux with SEO, is most SEO companies that you do hire, they're just building backlinks for you. So, and while that is important, really paying attention to your on page and how your site is built, is just as important as the backlinks too. And there's not very many SEO agencies that do both on page and your off page SEO.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
not that I've found.
Okay.
So you kind of have to like hire multiple people to make sure you have all aspects covered.
That makes perfect sense. And I'm super glad you walked me through that because my SEO knowledge just increased by about 300% in the past few minutes. So that's truly awesome.
Yeah.
You really have an interesting story of how you got started with, hey, I've got a limited budget. I don't think I want to commit it to hiring an agency to try and do SEO, but I like the idea that SEO is going to continue to build on itself, and the work I do today should benefit me, you know, into the future.
Right.
So I'm just going to learn it myself. What other parts of your getting started? Because I know you have a very interesting story. What else might you want to share about how you got started and where that's taken you?
Yeah. And how I got started in real estate.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is kind of a funny story. So most people, when they decide that they want to do real estate, they become an agent, right? And so I had like, this was back in probably my early 20s. I went to school to become a realtor, and took the first test, didn't pass it. And this is in Arizona, where it's like one of the harder tests. Didn't pass it, and then was just kind of like, this is not what I want to do, right? Like it just wasn't. And so I kind of put that off. And I had purchased a condo right after the 2008 like crash.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
bought it in 2010 for this condo in Mesa, Arizona, and I bought it for like 50,000,
Oh,
and
wow.
then 5 years later sold it for 105, something like that.
Not bad.
Yeah. And
Your
so I was
first
like,
deal.
cool, this is, yeah, my first deal. And my dad had actually helped me like fix it up and everything. And so that was kind of my first, yeah, that was my first deal. um, but it kind of got me thinking more towards like towards that. And it was funny because when I was 28 at the time, and was going to be moving to California to be with maybe I was a little bit younger than that, maybe 26 or 27. I was going to be moving to be with my now husband, but my boyfriend at the time, he lived in Los Angeles. And I was searching for jobs. At the time, I was an executive assistant for a logistics company. And I had been an executive assistant at this point for like probably 6 or 7 years. And so I had like I had experience at that job. And then like a few years before that too, at another company. And so at this point, I was like, I feel like I should be able to find a job. And I was applying to all these jobs in LA because that's where I was moving. And I did not get one call back
Wow.
from anywhere. And I was like, I was applying for like everything at this point. And so that got me like just really defeated. And one day at work, I like went into the closet and like just started crying because I was like just like frustrated because I'm not getting any responses. And at that moment, I just like prayed and then kind of collected myself. And it was crazy because like I really did have like just a peaceful feeling come over me. And I got myself together, went to my desk and was on Amazon and ended up buying, and this was like literally 5 minutes after I prayed. I bought an ebook, something to do with real estate, and it ended up being about wholesaling. And that's when I like discovered even what it was. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, I didn't even know you could do that. Right. And so then I ended up moving to LA, and that's when I started my business.
That is an amazing story because it talks about how you don't give up. It talks about how you're patient. It talks about how you relied on your faith. And most importantly, you took action, with all those things. And it's so cool because obviously we met you like after that. And,
Mhm.
once you'd launched a business that was really taking off and it was pretty exciting to see your results at that point. But I know that when you're getting started, that first 3 months, 6 months, a year can be really
Yeah.
difficult for some people. And if you
Oh,
were
yeah.
doing that with SEO, yeah, that would be almost prohibitive. So I know you must have been doing some other things at the same time. But
Yeah.
I really admire the way that you stuck with that, and now clearly it was worth that. And I think the world is a lot better off with the Christina that helps people the way that you do now versus Christina,
Thank
the
you.
executive administrator that that would be a lot easier to replace. I think your talents were probably a little bit wasted there, and
Yeah.
we're probably very sorry to see you go.
I know. And it's just so cool because like I was just looking for a job, and I was so selling myself short on like really what my potential was and
Hmm.
looking for a job. And so like it's just cool that like literally God closed every door so that I couldn't like there's no other way that because if I would have been, called back from some of this stuff, then I would have gone on and kept doing that. But like I was selling myself short instead of what I like really could be doing. So it's just, yeah, I love that story.
Well, so you brought up wholesaling, and that's kind of the epiphanal moment you had, after getting this ebook.
Yeah.
Talked about wholesaling, new concept to you,
Uh-huh.
and I know that you've done a lot since then with wholesaling and even virtual wholesaling.
Hmm.
Kind of walk us through that if you don't mind, and tell us, what appealed to you initially. What do you see as the advantages of that now, and what sort of direction could you give people that are wanting to explore that?
Yeah. So what really appealed to me about wholesaling was the fact that you could, um, well, first of all, I didn't know like you could sell a property for without even owning it, right? You have that's the whole concept of wholesaling.
Kind of a nice little caveat there, right?
Yeah, you can, and I mean, there's money involved in like marketing and, a deposit or whatnot, but pretty much like you can do it without having any capital. And that's why a lot of people do wholesaling to get started, is really doesn't take very much capital up front besides, marketing. And it's funny too, because like as you own a wholesaling company, if anyone who owns a wholesaling company, what they would tell you more than anything else, it's a marketing company.
That's right.
It's a marketing machine.
That's right.
And so that just really, I was like, that's so cool. Like you can sell a house and not even own it. Like you don't have to own it and you can still make money on it. And I loved that. And just to like explain a little bit about our business model. So I started after moving to Los Angeles. That's when I first started my company. And for the first few years, just did Los Angeles, and actually like drove to appointments and everything. But in Los Angeles, driving to an appointment, depending on what time you're going on, that could suck your whole day.
That might be a whole day adventure, right?
Yeah. I'm not kidding. There's some appointments that would take like 6 hours if you're, depending on where you're going. But yeah. And so just kind of by naturally from that, I started doing some deals virtually, and like, hey, and especially too with SEO, you do get a lot of leads from people who are out of state. And so you don't even, like, if you are going to an appointment, it's just to get pictures, not necessarily to like rub shoulders with the seller and, build rapport that way. So that kind of is what started me off with a virtual model. Right now, I'm in Phoenix. I moved back to Phoenix since I started. We've been in Phoenix just over a year now. And most of my business is still in Los Angeles. So we do everything 100% virtual. Even on our deals here in Phoenix now, we do them all virtual. So we do everything 100% virtually now. And we're in Los Angeles and Phoenix. Those are my two markets. But yeah, it's really cool just because I think what's kind of, at this point, there's a lot of people who are like, no, I want to get into flipping. And, flipping, we've done a few flips. I don't particularly love it. I love the in and out and on to the next one. And then I do, I am blessed in the sense that I am two really like high paying markets too, where like we get fees for like, we just did one for 75. We've done, you're getting some of the profits on these wholesale deals are what people would make on a flip. Right. So it's kind of made me just like stick to wholesaling. The first flip that I did with my partner, and I told him I wanted to wholesale it, but he wanted to flip it. So we flipped it, and ended up making, I think at the end of the day, we made like 50 each when I could have wholesaled it for $100,000. So in my experience, it's just like made me like kind of keep up with the wholesaling, and I like it.
Well, I'm sure you got a lot out of listening to Cristina talk about how to use SEO in a real estate wholesaling business. Stay tuned for episode 3, where she's going to finish out that topic and give you the missing pieces so that you'll have all that you need to be able to set up SEO in your wholesaling business. Thanks, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.